June 1993 saw Jurassic Park roar onto the big screen and was directed by Steven Spielberg. Produced on the budget of $63 million, the film smashed box office records and went on to gross $914 million worldwide, making it the most successful film ever made at the time. The film is based on the 1990 novel of the same name by Michael Crichton. Before the novel was even released, 4 studios had placed in bids for the rights. But with the backing of Universal Studios, and with Spielberg as the director, the studio acquired the rights in May of 1990. Spielberg had a lifelong fascination with dinosaurs and liked the idea of cloning dino DNA. It seemed plausible and an easy idea to sell to audiences. Storyboards and sketches were being produced just weeks after the rights were acquired. Spielberg had said that he wanted to make a good sequel to Jaws on land and cited 1933's King Kong as an influence for the special effects. But Spielberg believed that Jurassic Park would require more time in development in order to determine the special effects needed to create the dinosaurs. So he went off to direct the fantasy film Hook. Michael Crichton was then hired to adapt his own novel for the big screen, with final draft work being done by David Kopp. He cut out a lot of the novel's exposition, violence, and made changes to characters. With most of the budget going on the special effects, Spielberg sought after relatively unknown actors. He wanted good actors who wouldn't charge ridiculous prices. Dr. Alan Grant is played by Sam Neill. Other actors who were considered for the role were Kurt Russell, Richard Dreyfuss, and Harrison Ford. Dr. Grant is a paleontologist and has an introverted personality, and he really doesn't like children. However, he does warm to the 2 children that accompany him in the park. Dr. Ellie Sattler is played by Laura Dern. Other actresses who were considered for the part was Robin Wright, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Helen Hunt. Dr. Sattler joins Dr. Grant to the island, and she has a more prominent role in the film than she does in the book. The bunker sequence where she turns the power back on was added to make her a stronger character. Dr. Ian Malcolm is played by Jeff Goldblum, who is absolutely fantastic in the role and has become the most popular character out of the film. Malcolm specialises in chaos theory and is the ironic commentator within the story. He gives several predictions for chaos theory on the consequences trying to control nature. And of course, he turns out to be correct. The great Richard Attenborough plays John Hammond, who is the owner of the island. Attenborough was a little hesitant to take the role, as this was his first acting role in 14 years. But Spielberg told him he could see no one else in the role but him. Ariana Richards and Joseph Marcello play Lex and Tim Murphy, who are the grandchildren of John Hammond. The pair accompany Alan Grant through the park to get to safety and to avoid any dinosaurs. Bob Peck plays Robert Muldoon, who is Jurassic Park's game warden and a former wildlife hunter who has previously worked with Hammond. Due to his experience working with predators, his attitude towards the dinosaurs is realistic. He believes the velociraptors should be destroyed, as he describes them as smart and dangerous. Wayne Knight plays Dennis Nedry, who is Jurassic Park's computer programmer. His job is to fix any issues or computer bugs should they arise. But he seems less concerned with the safety of the park and more on how much money he can make by stealing embryos and selling them to a rival company. The film opens on Isla Nublar, which is located off the coast of Costa Rica. A team is overseeing a delivery of a velociraptor, which is to be included in the Jurassic Park exhibit. But the raptor is very aggressive and grabs one of the workers, who is killed, despite the best efforts of the game warden. The park's investors, represented by lawyer Donald Gennaro, demand that experts visit the park and deem it safe. Gennaro invites Dr. Ian Malcolm, where John Hammond, who is the CEO of InGen and owner of the park, invites Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler. The pair are reluctant to attend, but are persuaded when Hammond agrees to fund their work for another 3 years. Once the group arrive on the island, they are stunned to see living, breathing dinosaurs around them. Hammond also reveals that they have a T-Rex.
Say again. We have a T-Rex. Oh.
Put your head between your...
They then head over to the visitor centre, where the group discover how it was possible to clone dinosaurs, extracting DNA from a mosquito that had been preserved in amber, and have used frog DNA to fill in the gene gaps. The group witnessed the birth of a baby velociraptor, where Dr. Wu explains that all the dinosaurs in the park are female to prevent breeding. But Dr. Malcolm has a theory on that.
I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
The scientists also have a concern with the safety of the park and the dangers of humans and dinosaurs being in the mix together. The group are then joined by Hammond's grandchildren, Tim and Lex, for a tour of the park. But the tour does not go as planned, with dinosaurs failing to appear and a Triceratops becoming sick. The tour then has to be cut short due to a tropical storm, with the majority of the park staff departing in boats for the mainland. But when a disgruntled computer programmer deactivates the security systems in the park, it cuts all the power. The tour then stops next to the now unsecured T-Rex paddock. With dinosaurs running free, Dr. Grant, Tim and Lex must make their way through the park to get to safety. The visual effects for the film blew people away at the time. And even after 30 years, the CGI still looks solid. There are a few scenes where it's now starting to show its age. The CGI changed everything in the industry and was now seen as a tool to take advantage of. It had been used on a small scale in films such as The Abyss and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, but not on the scale like in Jurassic Park. Originally, the dinosaur effects were going to be created using stop motion by industry veteran Phil Tippett, who had started working on some of the sequences. Dennis Muren, who's a visual effects expert who worked at ILM, believed he could do the effects using CGI. He put some test footage together and presented it to Spielberg, who was blown away. Overnight, stop motion was finished and the puppeteers found themselves extinct. But thankfully the animators were still helpful in designing the movements for the dinosaurs. Steven Spielberg wanted to use animatronics as much as possible, and there was only one man for the job. Stan Winston and his team took on the challenge, and their work is incredible. When you see the sick Triceratops for the first time, you believe it's a real dinosaur. You forget you're watching a movie. Also, the scene where the raptor jumps out behind Dr. Sattler makes the creature more threatening. They used every trick in the book to sell the idea that these dinosaurs are alive. The effects team chose to use a practical or computer effect depending on the scene. John Williams composed the score and is a frequent collaborator with Steven Spielberg. The soundtrack for this film is iconic and is instantly recognisable as soon as you hear it. It gives that sense of wonder and fascination, but adds that layer of excitement to what you're about to experience. The T-Rex and Raptor attacks have more frightening themes to them, which does add tension to those sequences. Over the years, critics have often cited Jurassic Park one of the greatest and most influential films ever made. Following the film's success, Michael Crichton wrote a follow-up novel titled The Lost World that was released in 1995. Spielberg and Kopp would return respectively to director and writer for the 1997 film adaptation The Lost World Jurassic Park. Crichton would not release any further novels in the series, so any future instalments would be made featuring unused elements from the first two books. Jurassic Park 3 came out in 2001 and it does have a darker tone and sees the return of Sam Neill as Alan Grant. But I find the film a bit of a letdown, with its poor supporting characters and terrible ending. I personally put the Jurassic World trilogy separate from Jurassic Park, so I'm not going to talk about them in this review. However, if you would like me to review further instalments of the franchise, please let me know in the comments below. With the film being released in 1993, I was only 3 years old at the time, so I caught it later on VHS. I remember my nan getting a copy of it and I was super excited and terrified at the same time, especially of those raptors. But this film kicked off my interest in dinosaurs, and I've been studying and researching them ever since. The film is well remembered for its visual effects. The close-ups of the T-Rex and Raptors are incredible. Some of the CGI now is starting to show its age, but I can look past it. All the characters are relatable and all the cast give great performances. Jeff Goldblum is the standout for me. He is the guy that everyone should be listening to, but they don't, and of course he turns out to be right. I do find Tim and Lex slightly annoying. You know they're not in any real danger and they're going to live to see the end of the movie. But this is what Steven Spielberg does. He is a master of making family-friendly films that has the right balance to entertain both adults and children. Watching the film for the first time in a few years now, I've definitely picked up on some continuity errors. The big one is where the T-Rex pushes the Jeep off the side of the paddock. Now, there are previous shots that show that the paddock and the vehicles are at the same level. But when that thing is flying off the side, there's a huge cliff there all of a sudden. It makes no sense. There are some great moments of tension throughout the film. When the T-Rex chases the Jeep down, or where the two kids are hiding in the kitchen from the Velociraptors. By no means is this a perfect movie, and I do have an issue with the plot. The film does a great job in explaining the science behind everything. But as soon as that T-Rex escapes, all of that is just thrown out the window. I have a small grievance with the ending, where the Raptors have the main characters cornered and the T-Rex appears out of nowhere to save the day. How did the T-Rex sneak in there? Has he been walking on tiptoe? But none of these nitpicks affect my overall enjoyment of the film. My rating for Jurassic Park is 8 out of 10. If you've enjoyed the review, please subscribe and hit the like button to help make the channel grow. An adventure 65 million years in the making. Thanks for watching the Real Reviews.